ask if there's any scientists out there, or I don't know if even if it's a scientist that would know this, but is there something in every human's body where I'm not even going to say this right, where our own personal chakra meridian something lines up with a certain part of the globe, and we may never know our soulmate, our land soulmate, if we've never been to certain places, and if you just feel uncomfortable all of the time, could it ever be because you're living in the wrong grid or something? So I've never been interested in going to Amsterdam, and when I got there, I didn't even do my first thing yet. I felt, this is it. I feel home. I feel relaxed. I feel happy. I feel free. I feel right. It's not even a mood or an emotion. It wasn't, oh, because you're on vacation. It felt right. It felt right. It felt like everything fell into place on some chemical level. And I didn't lose that feeling all week. And in fact, when I left to go to Oslo, even though that's a beautiful place, I was angry and sad as though had fallen in love with a human and had to leave them. I was devastated. So we'll get to that in a minute. Part of my being in Amsterdam was interesting for me because I was walking around with a little bit of shame, if I can Brene Brown all you guys for a minute. And I was thinking, I actually had to grieve something while I was in Amsterdam. I had to grieve something that happened. Well, how much is 45 minus 19? Wait, hang on. 35, 25, 26. 26 years ago. Oh my God, how have I lived that long? And I don't even think 45 is old. I'm not saying I'm old. I'm just saying, like, that's a lot of years. So when I was 19, I was at college, and you could study, if you went to Emerson College, abroad in Amsterdam in a castle for an entire semester for the acting program. And I opted not to do it because I had such bad panic and anxiety, and it was undiagnosed at that point. It was only just, I would call them my weird feelings, and I knew it was on the spectrum of mental health, but back then we just had normal and crazy. And so if you were crazy, it was like, oh, you'll probably get lobotomized and have to live in an institution. So I just didn't even want to tell anybody that I couldn't breathe all the time, and I was having panic attacks, and I was anxious. And anxiety and panic are two different things. We've talked about it a million times on this podcast. And then I was depressed, and I just was as rebellious as I felt inside. As much as I wanted to get away and do my own thing, I was strangely anchored to where I grew up. I was afraid to go anywhere. And I was afraid to go to Amsterdam. It wasn't just the flight, but I was terrified of the prospect of flying overseas. I had no meds at that point. I mean, they existed. I just didn't know about that you could take them. And I thought, well, being away for 3 months, I'll feel discombobulated the whole time. I can't do it. And so when you have that kind of anxiety, it's a relief not to go to things, but somewhere deep down to where you can't access it, because if you did, it would be too painful, but you are jealous and you feel different and you feel sad that you aren't like everyone else who just doesn't. I mean, it just seemed like everyone I knew was like, we're going to Amsterdam, yay. And I was like, I don't understand. Like, they can just get on a plane, and some people had never flown overseas and had never lived away from home that long. And they were just excited about it. And I thought, that's me inside. That's really me. But I don't understand how they're doing that. I can't do this. And so I didn't go. And when you have anxiety and that kind of stuff, and you don't want to face that, it's kind of sad that you're missing out on something, you develop, or I would say, I'll speak for me, I developed coping mechanisms and defensive tools. And I don't even want to go there. I mean, that's mainly like to study blah, blah, blah. And I'm studying this kind of acting, back here for this semester. And I had this amazing acting teacher who did a lot of New York, off-Broadway stuff, and I thought she was really cool. And then I didn't have the mentality to say, oh, I'm really sad that I didn't go to Amsterdam, but I am having an amazing experience with this acting teacher here. I couldn't do that. I had to be, I'm better than everyone who went. This teacher's amazing. If they want to go waste their time and run around smoking pot in a castle, like, that's great, but I'm not into it. And that was another thing too, because I wasn't a pot person because it gave me more anxiety and I just wasn't my thing. Um, and so I felt weird about that too, because like I had tried as many times as I could to get into it. And it just, every time it was like just coughing and then I couldn't breathe and then I felt anxious. And I know it's all different now, um, legalized weed and all that. I've dipped in, but it's still not my thing. And it's so funny to me that I can talk about that now and I'll just put a pin in it. But my mom, like, you have to understand, my mom is like kind of maybe getting into weed and I want to make like a documentary about her doing pot for the first time. She's not going to let me. None of this is ever going to happen. But the fact that we talk about it is mind altering to me. Anyway, so I had to walk around Amsterdam and go, God, that I'm so sad I was that person. I wonder what would be different if I hadn't lived so many years with this secret and kept myself from doing things. And I felt sad. So I walked around Amsterdam feeling a little sad and I had to grieve this thing that wasn't able to come up since then. But the people that I know that went to Amsterdam, they actually turned me off to that city because they came back. I remember this one kid, Sean. Ugh, he's a love dove. I'm sure he's great now, but he was so a theater kid. And so was I, but I probably was just as bad as him. But he came back and he ended up marrying like an older woman who was some kind of dance teacher. And at their wedding, he's like, no gifts, just make us a present. And everyone made him these masks. And I was like, this is awful. When I get married, gifts, real gifts from stores. No one ever make me a fucking mask. Thank you. So Sean comes back and there's this coffee shop we all hung out in called Bella Vita, which was on Brimmer Street in Boston. And we smoked cigarettes in there because the life was good in the 90s and you were still allowed to smoke inside. So anyway, he lights up a joint in Bella Vita. And I'm like, that smell, Sean, you're smoking pot. And he goes, oh, sorry. I'm so used to being in Amsterdam where you can just like smoke weed in a coffee shop. And I'm like, really? You're that discombobulated? And I was like, this Amsterdam, if it's all these people like Sean making masks and forgetting what they can and can't do in certain, I don't want any of this place. I can't, I couldn't actually stand, even though I saw Dazed and Confused in the movies 10 times, 10 in a week. This is how, do you understand how confused I am? Like, I was a pot person, but I wasn't. I hated pot culture, but only if it had like cute boys and bell bottoms, but like don't Cheech and Chong me, but yes, Dazed and Confused me. So I'm in Amsterdam and now maybe it used to be different, but it's so obvious in Amsterdam that not every coffee, you don't just smoke weed in public in Amsterdam. That's what I thought you did. There are specific coffee shops, and I don't still really understand why they call them coffee shops, for doing that. And you know what they are because it looks very much like a legalized marijuana place. And it smells when you walk by like you're walking by a cigar bar. You're not like, oh my God. Like, so the fact that Sean came back and thought a regular coffee shop, like he got confused and lit up a joint, doesn't make sense with the way they look in Amsterdam, unless they used to look more like traditional coffee shops. I don't know. Again, 26 years ago. I'm sure it was very different. But anyway, I'm glad I went. I don't know if anyone, again, any scientists out there can explain to me, do we feel at home in certain places because it just matches up with our certain rhythms? And I hear the comments in my head. The Dutch came and colonized America and they were the worst slave owners and that's what you feel connected to, you white shit. And this is comments from white people. That's only white people talk like that. And perhaps that is it. But there was something about it. Now, again, I'm projecting way too much. I project positive things. I'll project negative things. But when I was there, I just felt like everyone, first of all, I had no idea about the bike culture. I had no idea that everybody rode bikes and that bikes and cars seem to get along in perfect harmony, but bikes and people do not. Like, no one's really walking as much as they're biking, and they're going 30 miles an hour. And they do not stop. If you're in the way, it's just like blah, blah, ding, ding, and you might get hit. But what I like about it is they've got hustle in Amsterdam, but it's not frenetic, crazy energy. It's just calm hustle. Like I'm riding my bike faster than a car and I'm smiling and I've got a little bell. But there was something about it there where